Our journey through Kagurabachi continues with Chapter 3, and if you're not caught up, I got a playlist on my page that starts from the beginning. Alright, so Kagurabachi Chapter 3 begins with a panel of this girl, whom we haven't been introduced to yet, and she is essentially speaking directly to us, the reader. So I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a fourth wall breaking moment, or if it's just a fun narrative device and she's technically speaking to somebody in universe that we can't see. Either way, she's essentially delivering us straight exposition and world building. So the chapter begins and she says, "Is this your first time in Tokyo? As you know, Japan is a katana society. While it's legal to own one for self-defense, they undoubtedly make the world more dangerous. And that's why the leaders of the Yakuza gangs and the big corporations are always in search of stronger self-defense measures. And that's where these guys come in, and we get a panel of all of these different sorcerers." He then continues and says, "Tokyo has more than 1,000 sorcerers, more than any other place in Japan, and connecting those parties is my job." So I guess she's the one that connects sorcerers with potential clients and finds them work. She then says, "Oh, this?" referring to the flyer behind her as if someone had asked her about it, and says, "Oh, it's a request from one of our regulars." And this flyer says, "Hishaku information wanted." So that group of sorcerers that Chihiro is looking for. And we even have a drawing of the flame tattoo that each of those members have on their hands. We then get a flashback to 3 years earlier where we see Shiba walk in this girl's shop and he says, "Hey, how's it going, Hino?" And she responds and says, "Hey, not bad. It's been a minute. What have you been up to?" And Shiba says, "Oh, this and that." And she says, "Okay, well, what's it going to be today? I've got a few juicy options for you. You can be the bodyguard for a CEO, or a bodyguard for a chairman's daughter, or security for one of these big estates." And Shiba goes, "Oh, no, 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 I'm not here for work today." And Hinao says, "Oh?" Shiba says, "Yeah, well, have you ever heard of Kunishige Rokuhira?" And Hinao says, "Yeah, of course I have. What do you think? I don't know anything?" And Shiba says, "Well, did you know that he was murdered?" And she says, "Yeah, I was shocked when I heard the news. The Hishaku group has claimed responsibility, apparently. And I heard that they stole some enchanted blades." And Shiba just kind of pauses and doesn't say anything. And she goes, "So what about it?" And Shiba says, "Well, actually," and then she notices that somebody else is walking in the shop as well. And then we get future Hinao continuing her narration that says, "That was the first time I learned that Mr. Shiba was connected to Kunishige Rokuhira." And we see that the person who has walked in is a young Chihiro. We then cut back to the present as Hinao's narration continues. She says, "After I heard their story, I agreed to help, but nothing ever turned up. It's always the same. Nothing but Yakuza and meathead sorcerers." And just then, somebody walks into her shop in the present, and she says, "Oh, welcome." We then see that it is this little girl that has just stepped inside, and it's here that we get the title drop for this chapter. Kagurabachi Chapter 3, Witness. It's also at this point that we get an establishing shot of the outside of the shop where it's revealed that it's called Cafe Haru Haru. So I'm guessing the implication here is that this is a front and it's like a tea shop or a coffee shop, but in reality, it's this sorcerer brokerage firm. We then jump ahead in time a little bit to the moment where Shiba and Chihiro arrive at the cafe, and Shiba barges in and is yelling, "Excuse me," and Hina out turns quickly and goes, "Hey, keep it down. I hate loud mouths," but then goes, "Oh," as soon as she sees who it actually is. And she gets really excited to see Chihiro and says, "Hey, Chihiro, looking so cool as always." And he just hits her back with the monotone, "Hi." And then she continues and goes, "You're so cool. You're so amazing." And he thinks to himself, "Amazing?" Hino says, "Well, welcome in, you guys." And Shiba says, "Yeah, thanks for contacting us." And Chihiro says, "So, someone witnessed an enchanted blade, huh?" And Hino says, "Yeah, she's sleeping in the back." And it's at this point that we see the young girl is actually fast asleep on the couch. Shiba says, "What? This little brat?" And Chihiro goes, "She's the witness?" And Hinao says, "Yeah, she conked out right away." We then get a flashback to when the little girl first entered the shop, and she comes in and says, "Hello." And Hinao says, "Well, hello there. Do you need something?" And the little girl says, "I've come to inquire about hiring a sorcerer." And she goes, "Excellent grammar, kid. Why do you need a sorcerer?" And she says, "Well, a bad guy's chasing me and I need protection." And he now says, "Well, in that case, how much money do you have?" And the little girl says, "Zip, zilch, zero." And Hino goes, "Oh dear." And then the little girl says, "Oh dear." And then Hino again says, "Oh dear. Well, by the way, what kind of bad guy's after you?" And the little girl says, a bad guy with the most strongest sword. We then cut back to the present where Hinao says, and that's the moment I knew she had to be talking about an enchanted blade. And both Chihiro and Shiba are just speechless for a moment until Shiba says, yeah, we obviously can't know until we hear more, but that's extremely doubtful. And Chihiro just says, yeah. And Hinao is like, what? Why? How come? And Shiba says, well, from the sound of it, the kid's just probably goofing around. I mean, come on. The most strongest sword? And Hinao's like, oh, what? Come on. And Shiba says, yeah, you can't just swallow some kid's tall tale whole and believe it off the jump. And Hinao says, well, you told me to let you know if we even got the slightest little lead. The little girl then murmurs the word hippos, and Chihiro goes, hippos? And then she says, cell division. And he goes, okay, she's speaking in her sleep. And Shiba says, what kind of dream is this? And Hinao goes, yeah, she knows about cell division? And then all of a sudden, the little girl shoots awake with a gasp, and she kind of gathers her surroundings a bit. And Chihiro goes, well, she's awake. And Shiba says, was that a nightmare? And then she goes, oh, wait, you're sorcerers. Are you here to protect me? But Shiba says, whoa, 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 hold up there, Missy. Let's get some things straight. First of all, who is this bad guy that's after you? And the girl immediately shuts down. She does not say a word. So Shiba says, what? Is that all you've got? Is that all you're going to say? That didn't take long. The jig is up, all right? There's no place to play around. You need to just go home. And the girl starts violently shaking her head no. And Shiba says, are you lost or something? And she says, I don't have a home. Shiba's demeanor then softens a little bit and says, no mom or dad? And the girl just shakes her head no in response. And he goes, well, that's a toughie then. I guess we'll take her to an orphanage. And the girl just kind of has this like dejected look on her face. But that's when Chihiro chimes in and says, what about food? Have you eaten lately? And the girl starts to speak, but then is drowned out by the grumbling of her own stomach. And she goes, well, there it is. And he goes, so you haven't had anything to eat then? Do you want something to eat? And she just immediately blurts out, tempura soba. And then, you mean it? And he goes, what do you mean do I mean it? You already said what you wanted. We then jump forward in time to see Shiba smoking a cigarette by himself as he waits outside of a restaurant. And as he's sitting there, he's thinking about all of the times he saw a young Chihiro take after his father by preparing him meals or cleaning up his laundry and just all of the little things he did for him. And Shiba thinks, yeah, Chihiro's always been good at looking after people. He had a lot of practice with his dad. We then cut to inside the restaurant where Chihiro and the young girl have just been served their food. And the young girl just blurts out, I'm Char. And Chihiro goes, oh, we're doing introductions now. Well, I'm Chihiro. And the girl starts eating her food and goes, you know, if someone were to ask me if this was extremely delicious, then I would say yes. And Chihiro goes, hey, Char, listen, after we eat, I'm going to take you to the orphanage. There's going to be lots of other kids that you can play with there. And she goes, what? You're not going to protect me? I thought this soba was to seal the deal. And Chihiro goes, well, who said anything about that? It's like Mr. Shiba said, the cafe is no place to be playing or joking around. And she gets kind of this stern look on her face and says, I'm not playing around. And Chihiro says, well, then why don't you tell me why there's a bad guy after you? And Char says, because, and then just kind of drones out. And Chihiro says, well, it's because you haven't got an answer, right? And she says, no, I just don't want to tell you. Chihiro doesn't say anything, and the two of them just sit in silence for a moment. And as this happens, we see this individual walk in the restaurant and come sit at this table behind them. Eventually, Chihiro says, well, at least just tell me about this super strong sword that you saw. And the little girl is just stuffing her face, but she starts to respond and says, Clorf, Clorf. And Chihiro's like, what? What are you saying? Like, don't speak with your mouth full. And she eventually finishes swallowing and says, a cloud comes out of it. Chihiro's expression immediately changes as he thinks back to his father's enchanted blades. And he says, a cloud? That's far too specific. This couldn't be a coincidence. Chihiro then looks at Char and says, hey, you're really not messing around here? And she says, no, I'm not. So Chihiro says, all right, well, did the guy with the sword have a flame symbol on his hand? And she says, I don't think so. And meanwhile, in the background, there's some sort of kerfuffle happening between the guy that just sat down and the waiter, because the waiter says, you don't want to order. what do you mean by that? And the guy just says, get lost. And the waiter says, hey, this is a restaurant. Either order something or get out. And Chihiro clocks this, but for now he's still just speaking with Char, and he says, so it was just the one guy with the really powerful sword then? And she says, no, he had a whole bunch of henchmen as well. And then things reach a fever pitch with the guy behind him. He just screams, shut up, as he breaks apart his chopsticks. Chihiro then turns around to see what the fuss is about, and we see that this guy has literally murked the waiter with the chopsticks. And he says, well, I finally found you, but this is a surprise. You have a bodyguard. What a pain. And Chihiro looks and is like still trying to process what's happening. He goes, hey, what? But before Chihiro can even finish his thought, this guy mutters the word invincible. And then all of a sudden, this nesting doll looking thing pops up and explodes. And this is a violent explosion that rocks the restaurant and literally projects Chihiro out onto the street. And everyone outside is just panicking and running from what just happened. But Chihiro is remaining calm, and we actually get his internal thoughts. And he's thinking to himself, okay, Char wasn't lying. Someone is after her. And if what she saw was an enchanted blade, then this sorcerer is working with whoever has it. But why is Char? No, I can't think about that right now. He then out loud says, Char, I'm sorry I doubted you. We then see that this unknown sorcerer now has Char all tied up, and he says, so you're still alive and kicking, huh? That's problematic. And we see that his hand is transforming into more of those orbs that just exploded. And meanwhile, Char says, Chihiro, I forgive you. Just please save me. And he says, you got it. And that's where chapter 3 of Kagurabachi ends, seemingly teeing us up for our first 1v1 sorcerer fight next chapter, so I'm really excited for that. Anyways, y'all, another great chapter. We seemingly got introduced to another main character in Hinao, the sorcerer broker, so I'm excited to learn more about her and just how this, like, coffee shop front business situation even got established. Like, is she the proprietor of this place, or does she just work there? So yeah, very curious to learn more about her. I'm curious to see if Char is like a just this specific story character, or if she will also be a character that is recurring in the long run. And if so, interested to learn more about her. Obviously, Chihiro, I think, has a little bit of a soft spot for her since she is also an orphan, but you know, we're gonna have to wait and see. And I also enjoyed the world building that we got in this chapter, because previously I was assuming that sorcerers were like extremely rare. I'm talking like, you know, maybe 10 to 15 around, but she revealed to us that there's over 1,000 in Tokyo. So I'm really excited just to see like what kind of powers everybody is gonna have. Like this guy here at the end with the exploding funzo balls, like where'd that come from, you know? And seemingly the powers are not tied to the enchanted blades, which is something I was wondering earlier, because there's only 7 of those that we're aware of, and you know, thousands of sorcerers out there. So magic must exist on its own, and then the blades are just like a way to take your power to the next level, I guess. So I'm also curious to see if there are other enchanted objects out there, which I have to imagine there are. So yeah, just really interested to find out about all of this. And then finally, y'all, I want to give a few quick shout outs to some people who have sent in some support in support of this new Kagurabachi series. So shout out to Branwyn, Eric, and Cam. Branwyn, thank you so much for the love and the encouragement, man. I do plan on continuing this. Here's what I'll say. I'm going to catch up and cover Kagurabachi no matter what happens. Really, the only thing I might potentially change is how I'm covering it. So, you know, we're going chapter by chapter for now. The first video got an amazing response. The second one, not so much, but that was to be expected. You know, a lot more people check out the premiere of something than the next one. But my plan right now is to maybe do about 10 chapters this way and then reassess and see if it is a good use of time or not. If it is, we'll keep it going. If not, I'll just get caught up and maybe just release like arc review thoughts instead of a chapter by chapter basis. But in any case, we're getting caught up either way, so no worries there. And then Eric just wanted to send in his thanks and excitement for this new series as well, so thank you so much. And then finally, Cam said, I highly recommend doing a series like this for Wistoria if you find it interesting. And I have heard of Wistoria, but I honestly know nothing about it. So I'll definitely check it out, but I can't make any promises about doing a series like this because I already have a long list of stuff I need to catch up on to cover for the channel. But if it's something I check out and I do like it, we could certainly add it to that list, but it just likely wouldn't be anytime soon. So I didn't want to get your hopes up. Anyways, y'all, that's all for this one. Stay tuned for chapter 4, and thank you so much for watching.